Well, I didn't know it was acting. Honestly, for many years, I have been doing this since I was a little kid, doing voices and creating little scenarios. And I didn't really understand that what I was doing was technically acting. And Mary Elizabeth is the one who, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn right back there, is the one who actually told me that I was an actor after we had completed Cowboy Bebop and I started getting some feedback from the fans. And I was very insecure about the whole thing. And I said, you know, I just don't feel like I'm qualified to do this. Other people have studied acting. And she said, what do you think you've been doing all these years? And that's when it sort of clicked for me that, oh, I'm an actor. And maybe I'll pursue that as a profession at some point. But I really didn't even consider it to be a viable option for me. I had all sorts of other careers before this, and I just sort of fell into it. And one day I booked a 7-Eleven commercial, and I thought that was it for me. And then the union went on strike. I was out of work for 1.5 years and kept my other 3 jobs going on the side to try to support it. And eventually it worked out. So I always advise people who are getting into it, or in anything in the arts, to do what you love, and regardless of whether or not it's a viable career, and then you just won't be disappointed. So I got lucky. That has happened in the past. It's usually from the fans' perspective, though, I think. There's a while in my career where people called me the guy with the one voice, and I had already done a whole bunch of other much higher and less gnarly type voices. But you know, I've never felt pressure from it either way, honestly, and it certainly hasn't hurt me, I don't think, from a casting perspective. I just sort of take the punches as they come, and if they want to hire me for the tough guy, I'm very happy to do that. It's all good. Well, the villains are fun just because it's a great way to burn off some angst and anger, especially driving in LA traffic. So it's sort of a safe way of letting that stuff out without hurting anybody. And also I like diving into the psyche of villains and trying to understand it from their perspective. It sort of gives me a broader global view of when people misbehave. And I try to work on my sense of compassion by doing that. With the heroes, it's always nice to be able to do something that kids can watch and that they're not terrified by. And that satisfies my young boy superhero mentality from when I was reading comics as a child. So they satisfy very different parts of me, and that desire to play heroes or villains can shift from day to day depending on my mood. So, but basically I'll play almost anything. I'm a voice whore. We don't really have the luxury of working on characters for the most part. Every once in a while we'll have a script the night before or a couple nights before and we can play with it. But it's not like on camera or theater or movies in general where you can work on a character for months at a time. Basically, I walk into a studio, they throw me a script and they say go. And so the preparation is really the 25 years of work that I've done prior to walking into that booth. And sometimes even the night before I'll think I'm coming in to play one character, they'll give me 3 completely different ones and scrap the first one. So prep time doesn't really exist in our part of the business, or at least to a very limited extent. Oh man, I would love to see that happen. I don't really care to be on camera, but I wouldn't mind voicing him. It'd be amazing. Doing anything in the Star Wars universe is incredible. I've been part of the game franchise for many, many years as Stormtroopers and many other characters, but to actually get to work on a Star Wars series brought it to a whole different level for me. And as a fan of the original franchise, I was there in 1977 when the first film made it to the theaters. I was there opening day. I think I saw it 4 times in a row. I've been a fan all these years, and I was incredibly excited to work on the games. But when I found out that I was actually working on the series, I did a 8-year-old fangirl scream, pretty much. And that has continued internally throughout this whole process. It really is a whole different level of fandom, and I learned so much by coming to the conventions and hearing everybody's experiences of Star Wars and how it's affected them. So just to be part of that community is humbling. And as far as how I approach the character, I'm a very organic actor, so I go by either what the director tells me or the description that's put in front of me or a character model. And I just have a knee-jerk reaction of what I think the character should sound like. So I started out with Zeb pretty much in that voice, but it was a bit more cockney, it was a bit hard to understand. And so I just had to sort of finesse it, throw a little bit of Australian in and smooth it out a little bit so that it was at least intelligible and translatable to other languages, which is also important. So we nursed it though, and the team behind it, Dave Filoni and his crew, are geniuses at this stuff. So I just trusted them and do what they tell me. I'm a voice monkey, you know? A prehensile voice monkey, apparently. Yeah. Toonami has been such a huge part of my life. I feel like I've grown up in that universe. When it went off the air, I cried. When it came back on the air, I celebrated with everybody else. I was part of the Twitter storms to bring it back. The fans are really what brought it back. It was my first experience of the power of the fandom to actually bring a show back on the air that had gone off. I was just there this morning at Adult Swim Studios, and we recorded the next upcoming episode of Toonami, and it was like full circle. Every time I see those guys, it's like coming home. They're family to me. Some of them I've been working with for years over the phone, and I've never met in person. And it's just one of those weird things. Toonami I recorded from a remote studio in Los Angeles, and some of the people that I had been working with for years and years and years, I hadn't met until very recently. So getting to go to the studio just brings back all those feels from all the time that we've put into this show. And the love from the fans, just being out here on the floor and hearing how much Toonami has meant to everybody over the years and brought anime to now probably a third generation. It's humbling. It's amazing to be part of that process.
We all grew up on that.
Yeah, it's pretty, me too, me included,
Yeah.
at least emotionally. I was a grown-ass man by the time I was doing it, but I feel like I've grown up in that environment too. I relate to all of them from different parts of my psyche, I think. That could be due to split personality disorder, I don't know. But they all sort of become part of me, I become part of them. I think Spike was such a huge benchmark for me, Spike from Cowboy Bebop, just in so many ways. It was at a pivotal time in my life and in my career. So that's probably the most profound one. And also my partner in life now is the lady who directed the show and also played Julia, my love interest in the show. So life is definitely imitating art. So in the grand scheme of things, I think Cowboy Bebop would probably be the most profound show in my career. But other characters also hold special places for me. Wolverine, for example. I grew up in a comic book environment. My grandfather owned a bookstore. My uncle ran the comic book department. My very first job at 12 years old was sorting comics. So to get to voice an iconic superhero like that is unbelievable. And then there's Amon and now Zeb and Starscream, all these other characters. It's something I never could have imagined doing in my lifetime. So each one holds a very special place in my heart. I kept working, honestly. I kept working. I meditated too. That was a huge thing. I did a lot of personal growth work and meditation, and I still do that now. That really helped me to keep centered and not to give up and not to go crazy, because this business can make you nuts. But I worked. I'm a hard worker. I like to be working all the time, so I would just take on any kind of jobs that I could to sort of keep me moving in a forward direction. And I've had a lot of terrible jobs in my life, but every single thing that I've done has really helped this career. I have experience doing some really awful, weird things. So, and you never know when that's going to come into play, especially if I'm doing like a loop group for a movie or a TV show. You know, they'll say, does anybody in the room know anything about filling fire extinguishers? And I'll go, yep. Anybody know about deskunking dogs? Yep. Anybody know about picking up condoms in the back of a movie studio? Yep, that was my job. Yep, did it. So who knows? You know, you never know. Even the most menial of jobs may pay off no matter what you do. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.